Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy. Thank you so much for watching my video. Today I have part 2 of the final fitting of the Fairmont project, and this involves, the front accessories and things like that. I started making these videos this way because it wasn't like, an engine installation or anything like that, but it is an important part of the build because there are all these little things you need to do to make the thing work together as a complete package. Most of what I'm going to cover in this installment is the fitting of the cold side of the turbo. I'm going to leave you with this though. What you're about to see in this video is probably going to change, and it's going to change based on some of your recommendations in the video that I did about mounting the intercooler. You had mentioned that the routing that I had didn't seem to really make sense, and honestly, you're right. The reason things are routed the way they are is because I purchased my turbo as part of a kit for a small block fuel-injected Ford, which the inlet for the intake manifold is over on the passenger side of the vehicle, hence the reason everything is routed the way it is. I have a carbureted vehicle. I don't have those same constraints, as you pointed out. So I'll probably be changing what you're going to see here in the not too distant future, but I'll be sure to make a video of that. This video still has value though. It goes through the process of fabrication, me thinking through things. It's the kind of thing you run into with custom cars like this, and if nothing else, it'll be entertaining. I try to keep the pacing good and informative, which is what I try to do with all my videos. Anyway, I'm done talking now. I'm gonna let you get to the video. We'll catch up at the end. Thanks for watching. Now on with the show, Eric.
I have two parts to this solution. I've got this 90-degree brass fitting here that I'm gonna use in this location, and then I have another fitting that I'm going to use here. I've been thinking about this, how it just sticks straight up and then the heater hose has to go up and then travel back. What this will allow me to do when it's in place is angle it straight back towards the firewall, which is where it's going. So I've got that 90-degree angle covered. This just seems cleaner to me. This part's going to be simple enough to install. And I'm really kind of glad I had this piece of hose, because it's kind of working out. I just need to get the angle. And I got this stuff at the hardware store. I've been spending a lot of time at the hardware store and money. It's all these little things that are so necessary but can slow you down, and that'll flow back nicely. I'll have to probably sneak it underneath the fuel lines back here, but I don't think that'll be a big deal. Now for this other one. Just like before, I'm going to put a little bit of Honda Bond on these threads. There's going to be plenty of time for it to cure between now and when I actually fire this thing up. Still got a fair amount of work to do. I mean, it looks complete or close to it. Still so much to do. Wiring, stuff like that. Important stuff. Well, sometimes the best laid plans, that piece is not going to work. Have to come up with a different solution. Back to the drawing board on that one. Well, we struck out there and got to make yet another trip to the hardware store. Yay! That being said, I want to make this connection between here and also cut this down so that I hopefully have enough hood clearance. Here's the thing. This was designed for fuel-injected vehicles, so the intake would be pointed straight over in this direction, and this comes over and it's got this 90-degree bend that would have gone in there. I don't have that set up, and I don't have to worry about that. In fact, I can take a straight shot from here to the carburetor rather than making this bend or this other bend. Therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this tube here, and then I'm going to add another piece of tube in between here and the carb hat so that I can have a straight shot coming out of this hole. There's something else I want to accomplish while doing this. The connection to the intercooler on this side hangs down pretty good, and I want to bring that up. And if this pipe is shorter, I'll be able to do that. So I want to try and get the fitment from that part of the cooler up to here squared away. And that's going to start by first figuring out how much I need to cut out of this tube to make that come up to where it needs to be, and then also cut this end off so that I'm ready to take that straight shot into the carburetor hat. Thinking about the best way to go about this, I don't like this hanging down. I want this to be pointed straight up like that. I would love that. Just straight across and up. I've disconnected the other pipe up here. And to me, it makes the most sense to take everything I need to take out of the same pipe rather than cutting two different pipes. At least that's the way I feel about it for now. That may be subject to change. It sort of happens. I think I'm gonna have to take this part of the tube off and pull this out to the top. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to come down this way, but I've got to get these clamps and everything lined up and get this pointed in the direction that I want it. And once that happens, I'm gonna see if I can fit the rest of the tube up top. The one thing I'm losing out of doing these cuts and everything that I'm gonna regret is this lip, this little raised area here, helps keep the hose on. Once you clamp it down, it helps lock it in place. I'm not gonna have that. I don't have a tool to do it. You need a special machine to do that with. So I'm just gonna have these cut straight across. Pretty sure they'll be fine. Certainly something to be considered if you're gonna be modifying these tubes as I am. Now I've got this position and clamped in the place that I want it. It's not hanging down anymore. I'm gonna pull the other tube up through the top, but I like the way that works so much better. This is more like where it was going to be. I could enlarge this hole and move everything over also. I'm not feeling that. But no matter what, this has got to come out so that I can do my trimming. Have to hold your tongue just right. But I think I got to cut about almost 2 inches out of this part down here. But I'm going to start by cutting this part, or this piece, straight across. I think I'm going to put masking tape around the circumference and mark a straight line. Not too worried because I got plenty of tube. I tried to buy a 1 foot section, which is all I would need, but they were completely sold out of those, so I had to go for the 2 foot section. But at least it gets me what I need, and I've got a little bit extra in case things go south. I also have 2 more things. I'll put a link in the description to where I got this stuff. I've got a piece of rubber tubing that I can cut so I can create a union in here, and then also one that goes up to 3.5 inches. All this stuff is 3 inches, except for the carb hat, which is 3.5. So this goes up to that. So when this finally terminates at the carb hat, all I'll have to do is run this. So really, I just need to make a coupling here for this. And then I've got extra clamps for all of that also. Thinking 2 things. First, how am I going to cut a straight line going all the way around? But second, what am I going to cut it with? Positioning this tape in such a way, this gives me virtually a straight line all the way around. So I'm just going to use that. As far as what to cut it with, I think I'm just going to go with the cutoff wheel. Seems like one of the quickest, easiest ways to do this. You could use a hacksaw. I also have a pneumatic hacksaw that I could use for this. I'll probably have to reposition it a couple of times during the cutting. Switching to face shield mode. You really got to be brave to cut new parts. You really do. Now it's okay if I cut it a little bit long, but if I cut it short, I can't go back. This edge is ugly. I'm going to take it over to my grinder and see what I can do to clean and straighten it, make it less hurty looking. Cutting disc did do a pretty good job of cutting it, but it hurt it pretty good. This is stainless here. The other piece I got's aluminum. Hopefully that'll cut a little bit easier. Obviously I'm going to have to clean this out really good before final assembly too. It's not straight, but it'll be covered by a straight rubber hose. I can take my protective rag off. Here's the piece that goes here. So I can do a straight shot just like that. This lower part isn't connected, but this entire time I'm fighting against this hole.
I keep wanting to go up and over this way. This was for the carbureted version, straight 6 of this engine. I'm sure it wasn't nearly the placement or the size that a 5-liter fuel injected engine would have. Therefore, I'm going to come back in here, enlarge this hole back in this way so that, and I'm going to do this before I cut anything off the bottom here. That may be all I need to do. I may just need to locate this further up into the fender, and if I do that and get where I need to be, that's less cutting. Well, less cutting on the pipes anyway. So I'm going to make that hole bigger. Trying to come up with something that looks somewhat natural instead of completely hacked to bits. Like I said, I really want to get up into here. Honestly, this is about as far as up as I can go because the inside of the fender is right here. So it's right there. So it might be that this line right here is as far as I can go. I can't go up any farther. I'm going to use my Astro pneumatic saw to do this with. I think this angle would work. This would actually work a lot better without this turbo thing in the way, but beggars can't be choosers. I can tell you, this is harder to control than it looks. Did it help or did it hurt? Certainly made installing the tube easier. I'd almost like to see a little more off this top. This is movable, so I can point this anywhere. I just want to make sure that I'm able to clear the turbo, but as far as what it's doing underneath, inside the fender here, not exactly desired result. Yeah, I almost feel like if I can somehow open this top a little bit more. I'm backed right up against the top of that fender. I think it's time to connect it underneath just to see what it really does. So this is kind of what it would be like if it was connected. I'm gonna actually put the rubber hose piece in here just to have them connected. That way I can just sort of gauge how much I'm gonna need to take off of that upper tube to get these things to mate up so that I don't have this ugly bend here. You know, pointing this back this way is also helping. It still sinks down a little bit, not nearly like it did. And I think that's the material I just cut out of the fender. Let's see what that looks like up top. So here's the situation up here. Where it's connected now sends it further down into this pipe. And it's not a horrible thing, but it's not a good thing either. This is hot exhaust, pretty hot exhaust. And I don't really want this sitting on top of the exhaust like that. I'd like to see it further up and away. That seems fine to me. I just need to see if it's achievable. The more I'm playing with this and the more I'm thinking about it, it's hitting the inside of this fender, and there's a 90-degree bend right down in behind here. If I lower that 90-degree bend, I can pull everything up higher and farther away from this exhaust where I want it. So I am going to need to cut a little bit off the bottom down here in order to make that part of it happen. And I think I'm going to do that first before I ever start doing any measuring or cutting of this final piece here. That way I know exactly where everything's going to sit up to this point. Question becomes, how much do I take off? Little bits at a time. That's what I'm thinking. And this is what I'm running into. This 90-degree bend here, or I shouldn't really call it a 90, but this bend here makes it so that this sits up higher and backs up against the inside of that fender. If I cut some off here, it will lower this whole piece down, and I'm hoping I have more room up here to play with so that I can position this more the way I want it to be positioned. I wonder if this might work better. Seem to cut through the other steel fairly well, but I don't have as much control with this. Stick with what I know. Although this might leave a better edge. Yeah, I'll try it. Sort of laughing at it a little bit. Maybe if I cut with the wire wheel, or not the wire wheel, the cutting wheel, then I could get the blade in there and then go around.
That's not working out. I just bent the heck out of my blade. Much straighter cut than the last one. I wasn't trying to go around some funky bend. I'm gonna clean up this edge, test fit it, see where it's at. That thing is cumbersome. Well, I can just barely fit it down in there, but already I see an improvement. It's farther away. It's in what seems to be a better position. I'm gonna connect it down underneath and then come back up here and see what it's like. Seems to be exiting straight there. I'm gonna tighten these clamps. I do like that better. Keep trying to figure out what's gonna be best here. I say that because I'm still backing up against this fender and I'm still coming close to that clamp. Although I could force it down like that. Once again, still up on that fender. I think I need a little bit more because with the bottom pushed all the way up where I want it and this where it is, it pretty much comes in contact with the turbo here. If I cut just a little bit more off of that bottom, I'll be able to hopefully pull up the underside more and get that into a better position, which I like it better over here. I don't like it backed up against the turbo. This is like the hottest part of the turbo right here. This is like the hottest part of the exhaust right now. I do have this cover, which will be over it, which will help keep the heat away from this, but this clamp won't be covered, and I don't want my colder, supposedly colder intake charge backing right up against some hot exhaust getting heated before it goes in the engine. It can be better. Inching ever closer. Haha. That might be the best one yet. I'll put the clamps on inside here. Make sure it's firmly in place. And once I know that it is, we'll fab up this section. Yeah, I like where this sits now. I like it. But look at how that is now. I have like a mile of room in here to play with. Now we just need to fab the next part. I'm trying to make this curve work. What I've done is I've supported the lower part to be in the position that I want it in when everything's all done. So that way, whatever fab work I do in here is in line with where I want things to be. And this goes over and it'll take a slight bend and go into the carburetor and it will probably be just fine. But then there's this other part of me that's wondering, should I just hack this off here, put my coupling down in here and just straight out? More than enough pipe to go down into the fender well. And I think I'm gonna scrap the idea. It just seems easier to work with what I've got here. This is my thinking, because if it was down in here, I could make an even straighter shot. But if I come off of here, it'll be a little wonky. So I guess the real question is do I mind a little wonky? Or do I cut this way back down in here and then just have this straight piece of pipe coming out? I'm gonna try it this way first. I'm this close and I have enough pipe and rubber hose to where I can fix it if I don't like it. All the other rubber unions seem to be about 3 inches, so I'm gonna go with that. And since I've got these nice ribs to follow, I can just go along the inside of one of these lines with a utility knife. A little bit off. So we need to more directly do this. These are a lot easier to cut than the metal ones, right? Now it's resting right on top of that, unless I start pushing it back. The way this is now, it's laying right on top of that exhaust pipe. I don't want that. I can do better. It's going to require a little thinking. This doesn't quite line up. Not quite, but I have an idea. This was the 90-degree bend that formerly went into the intake manifold. This is my thought. I'm thinking about taking this pipe here, cutting it where it's still straight coming out of that first clamp down there, adding this piece, then taking my straight piece of aluminum here and running this down into the hole like that. First step in this process though, just to see if this will even work, is I'm going to remove this pipe and then put this pipe on the end here and see if it even has a good angle going over the top of all of this. That's the whole point of fitting things before you actually commit. Is this way I'll be able to have a better idea of how everything is going to look at final assembly. It also gives me the opportunity to go back and correct any mistakes. There's a lot of benefit to doing what I'm doing here, namely in that it helps eliminate problems later down the road. And this is what I'm advocating. I'm advocating cutting this right down here to just have that much pipe sticking out. Then after that, we have this, which down inside of here may come out to meet this. I haven't bolted the carburetor down yet, don't freak out. That sort of does the trick, doesn't it? Sort of does it like really, really well. Like, I'm glad I cut this out because now it's definitely a straight shot. It looks like it belongs. That, I like that better than anything. This is what it looks like underneath, and it's pretty stinking awesome, I think. I do need to cut a little bit of length off the end there, but I think my idea for the angle piece to make the connection from here forward is going to work out really well. In fact, I'm just sort of eyeballing where to cut that other piece. I might have enough from what I remove to where I can just put a short piece right here going up that's just long enough to fit into here, and then it'll connect up top. So I may have everything I need, and I won't be cutting on this stainless steel, which is going through my cutting bits quite rapidly. And this can sort of be used if it ever goes to fuel injection. If I just cut that back about 3-4 inches, 4 inches probably, maybe even 6, not sure. Let's get a tape measure up in there. If I take about 4 inches off of it, I think I'll have enough pipe left over to put into here that I can attach the angle to, and there'll be enough sticking out of the other pipe to attach to this. So I may have everything I need. So this may be fortuitous that I ended up with this longer piece of pipe, because I think it's going to solve all the problems, and we'll just eliminate this piece of pipe altogether. Got an idea this time. Hopefully to make a straighter, more accurate cut. Now when I lay the tape down, I've sort of got a guide. I'd say that worked pretty good. I just remembered I have this, and if I'm not mistaken, it's not quite 4 inches, but it might do the trick. It's also got these ends on there. I still need to cut that shorter, no matter what, but I did forget I had this piece that's designed for joining these things together. But this makes me wonder, right? I still need to cut that shorter. This part here was not so much an aesthetic choice as it roughs up the surface and makes it so that it will hold a little bit better. In fact, I think I'm going to go around and do this a little bit more out to about here. Yeah, you can just feel that this has grip. So don't worry about that part, it's not even going to be seen. Before I put this piece in, I'm going to get everything set up underneath. Set it all up to receive its new part. Seems easiest to me just to take this pipe down right here. And having this joint be flexible now, also super helpful. And I have a little bit more length because I decided to go with this piece here. The other one would bottom out. Not really sure the angle quite yet. Haha. Out of all these that I've done, I love how this one's looking. Love it. I'm very happy with where that's sitting. I think it's exactly where I want it to be. Plus, the rubber is flexible, so I'll be able to fudge it back and forth a little. Probably going to be better to connect it from underneath. But so far, I'm really liking what I'm seeing. It's not quite sitting on there right. Yeah, aluminum's real easy to mess up. That sucks. Well, when I go for final assembly, I'll hide that, put that on the bottom side. But yeah, these pieces were aluminum. I couldn't find other stainless pieces. You know, I might be better off. This is the natural angle of that hose. I'm gonna be stressing it. I know they make hose that's sort of at it's not a 90, it's more like a 135 or something. That might be a better choice. I can throw a clamp on that now. Getting these clamps just right is kind of a trick. That's like so pro. It really is. Kind of proud of it. However, I do believe I am going to invest in one of those different elbows that doesn't have a 90 degree, has less of a bend to it. I think that will help a great deal. I really like that. The angle's good. It doesn't have that convoluted piece of piping in there anymore. It just seems right. Less restrictive. I have to be careful of this clamp. In fact, I'll probably move this clamp slightly down and over so that it doesn't interfere or come into contact with this in the same way. Outside of that, I'm very happy, but I am going to get a different piece of tubing that doesn't have the 90. It has a wider angle, so it's not as tight like this, it's wider out. What I have on here works fine, just slightly stressed. But I do want to get this over, and I do want to move this clamp down and out of the way so that it's not coming into contact with this. Not just because it'll create a noise and a wear point, but also because heat transfer. Definitely want to try to make sure that my cold air going in is as cold as possible. That's kind of hard to do when you're right on top of the exhaust. In fact, when I put this on next time, I can flip the whole clamp around and have this pointing up right over here instead. Once again, fitting things first has allowed us to figure these problems out long before they're real problems. Just doing that did a lot. It not only opened up that little bit of space here, but just feels better. Almost there. Now, I want to check my hood clearance, and I've got to shave this down to the proper location, and then test fit the hood and see if it comes in contact or not, and if it does, got to figure out a solution for that. I also like that this is flexible down in here and I can move it out of the way like that. That is useful. Although, I'm thinking before I get ahead of myself, I should probably mark where that nut ends up so that I can shave that down. Ooh. Fender moving. Ah, my beautiful carburetor. Love that thing. Oh, wasn't down in there very far. Stud was only down in there a couple of threads. I can have it down in a bit more than that. I don't want to bottom it out, but I am going to bottom it out and then back it out a couple of turns. Okay, that's bottomed out, and then I'm going to back it out about that much. And then I'll make my mark. I doubt that I'll have to cut nearly as much off.
Before I run this clip, I know that some of you have suggested running the nut down on the threaded piece before making the cut so that when you run it off after the fact, it can clean up the threads. And that's an excellent suggestion. However, I still want to chamfer the end to make it easier to install the fastener after the fact.
All right, whenever you cut things off with a cutoff wheel like this that are threaded, there's going to be some burrs. I'm also going to chamfer the inside of this so that the nut goes on easier. I've already installed the retaining nut. Okay, it's all the way down. Back it out a couple of turns. Just going to run this down snug for now, because if I need to make any adjustments, I've got a little bit of threaded area I can do that with. Might need more chamfering. Might have got it. I need that to stick up a little bit more. Yeah, my chamfer's not working out too good. I'm gonna be fighting with this every time I take it on and off. And I know that'll be more than once, so I'm gonna redo that and I'll be right back. There was just a little burr on one of the threads, so I just took the adjusting nut, ran it up, tightened it and loosened it on the end a couple of times. Seems to be happy now. Now the issue seems to be on this end. Works fine here. Seems to be happy with just that drop of oil. Very happy with that. I'm gonna tighten down the lock nut. Actually, I'm still got a few adjustments to do to the carburetor, so this is just temporary. What we can do though is check hood clearance. I'm gonna run a couple of nuts down on the carburetor just so that I know that it's fully seated. Yeah, look what that did. It did change when I tightened those down. That's a lot more like real life. Honestly, when I get that other tube down there, that may change this location and bring it up slightly, which I would like. I'd like a little air gap between here. I'd like this knot to sit right on top of that pipe. If not, I'll find some way to put a rubber support or something up inside this hole here to hold this up. I can test fit the clamps and throw those on there. Brian and I are going to test fit the hood. Just going to set it down on here. I'm not going to bolt it up. It's sitting on there now. Darn it. Darn it! Darn it! Darn it! You can see it plain as day right through here. Question is how do I solve it? I latched the front just to see where it would sit. Trying to get a feel for what I might need to do to correct this problem. And I don't know if I can make my hood gap really crappy and sort of make it work. I mean, it would be touching the hood, but I wonder if I could raise the mounting points of the hood up enough in the back here to where, yeah, it would have a really crappy gap, but at least I could close the hood. And then there's thinking of lowering the engine down somehow. If I could get that to come down a couple millimeters, that might work. I'm not sure how I'd do that though. Got brand new engine mounts and I had to go through some trouble just to get those mounts to work because my engine block is a custom block. So stock parts, I'm having some trouble fitting stock parts to it as a result. I don't know if I can fudge it around. Right now I've got a couple of washers in between the engine mount and the engine to try to raise it up to get the clearance that I need. If I take those washers out, will it be just enough to bring this down? Just enough? I don't know. That's a problem for another day though. This is one of those kind of problems I need to think about for a bit. I'm not going to solve it in the next half hour. I don't think I'm going to solve it in the next half hour. Let's put it this way, if I sit here and think nothing but about fixing that, I'm going to drive myself crazy. I think I should just file it, move on to the next problem, and one after another, sooner or later I'll be driving this car, I hope.
Well, that concludes part 2 of the final fitting of the Fairmont project. As stated at the beginning of the video, a lot of what you've just seen is probably going to change in a future video. In fact, I'm almost certain of it. But that was based on your recommendations because, you know, sometimes you're smarter than me, and I'm cool with that. But I'm going to take those recommendations and also some of the work that I did in this video and try to repurpose it in a future video because I believe I'm going to change the routing of the cold side of the turbo. So don't get your panties in a bunch, I'm going to change it. Outside of that, the reason why I made this video, or I published this video anyway, even though things will change, is so that you get a better idea of what it takes to build a car like this. I'm trying to make the most detailed documentation of a vehicle build on YouTube. And that's sort of the purpose behind Oliver and what I'm doing here. I'll put links in the description to tools, parts, information. So if you have questions about this video, please check. There are also other videos. If you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I'd ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. I will also link that in the description. Also linked in the description will be Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram if you wish to connect with me socially. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.